Dear friends, thank you for accepting my invitation and coming
You're
to the
welcome.
program. As you know, the name of the program is The Starting Point, and usually in the beginning we discuss early events, early memories, encounters, influencing you in a durable way. Would you like to begin, Marianne? In Europe, we say ladies first,
Oh, okay.
always.
Sure. Well, my early years were spent in Kansas and in Battle Creek, Michigan.
Oh, quite opposite
Yeah.
places, yeah.
And I was actually born in California, but anyway, traveled
Stretch it
across
all.
the country.
Excuse me, why were
Well,
you say
my-
your family traveling that much?
Yeah, my father was employed by the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. He had an agriculture degree, and he used to teach at Loma Linda University, and then he was a farm manager at a boarding school in Kansas, and then we moved back to a farm in Michigan, and eventually he worked for the Department of Agriculture.
Interesting. So, as a child, do you remember being surrounded by farms?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh yeah, we had a
memories?
special farm dog, and his name is Queenie, that was very trained. And she knew how to go get the cows from the field and bring them in. And we had commands that we were only allowed to say to her certain times so that she would go get it. She was a really smart and special dog.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, did you enjoy life on the farm?
I did.
Yeah.
And when we were at the boarding school in Kansas, there was, of course, a lot of teenagers around, and I would hang around with the teenagers and do lots of fun stuff with them too. So I was like the little bratty, faculty kid.
Yeah. So then your family moved to Battle Creek, Michigan.
Battle Creek, Michigan, which is where my father was from.
Oh, really?
Yeah, originally, and that's where my father and mother met.
Oh,
My mother
so
had a teaching job in Battle Creek, and that's where she met. So
Very
they eventually
interesting.
moved back to their roots there.
So this is a place, very significant place to the Adventist history and identity.
Yes.
At that time, so you were about 10 or older? When you
I
moved
was in
there?
third grade when we moved back to
Yeah,
Battle Creek,
Yeah.
something
So
like
at
that.
that time, were you already about the historical significance of the place?
I'd heard about Battle Creek because our church kind of teaches a lot of the organization of the church happened
Yes,
there.
yes.
And also, Battle Creek was a name for Kellogg's cereals, which was
Yes.
they have advertisements,
Yeah.
which that was also started by Adventists.
I see. So did you enjoy moving there and visiting places?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have memories?
Yes, I enjoyed it a lot. Coming from where I was in more rural locations on the farm, moving to Battle Creek, it seemed like a big city, but later out I found out it was really kind of a tinier place. But yeah.
And so connecting with the historical places.
Yes, I went to, the school that I went to is Battle Creek Academy, which was the first Seventh-day Adventist high school
Fantastic.
ever. And yeah. And Ellen G. White, she was one of our founders, and as her historical home was there, and our youth group would go and paint her house.
Oh.
The place that she was buried was like a block away from my home, and I used to go walking in that cemetery. A very pleasant experience. So I had a lot of that background, and every week the church would have people come in, and they would take them on tours of
Yeah.
historical
So
sites.
you're
or
part sometimes guiding the
Oh, I wasn't old
you
enough. By the
don't-
time I
don't-
left, I wasn't old enough to be a guide.
I see.
And now they've expanded that. They brought in more homes
Yeah,
from
now
across the
it's quite-
country, and there's an Adventist village there and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. Of course, I don't know. Let me ask you, at the time of your childhood, were there around some persons who maybe not meeting Ellen White, but close relatives of her?
Well, my grandmother
Your grandmother?
met her.
Really? And
Yeah.
you met your
Yes,
grandmother?
yes, my grandmother, she lived to be almost 100.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So we
nice.
had her for many years. And yeah, when she was young, she lived in New England, and Ellen G. White had traveled over there, and she heard her preach when she was a
She heard her
child.
preaching?
Yeah.
So she shared with you some memories. Do you
Yeah.
remember anything?
Oh, just a little, just a little snippets, but
Yeah.
that's not a whole lot, just
Yeah,
there.
Interesting. Something related to her style, personality. Not so many,
Not so much
detailed.
that. No.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Do you think it influenced you to grow in such a place? You know, dominated by.
Oh yeah, it's
yeah,
tremendous.
yeah.
Well, and it was a good community to grow up in
Yeah.
because there were so many Adventists,
Sure.
and it was good to be immersed in that and feel like you were supported in your beliefs. And now as an adult, I work in a completely secular environment. You know, you're not really, hardly anybody talks about their religion at all. And if they do, it's certainly not my religion.
Yeah, quite different.
Yeah, it's quite different.
We return to you, Marianne. Will, what are your memories?
Oh, I was born and grew up until I left for Andrews in Milwaukee. And I heard stories of the Italian section, the third ward, which is what they always called it, where most of the Italian.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, well, the city was divided up into wards, and each had its own alderman and stuff like that. And the third ward just happened to be where all the Italians hung out. You know, they had. I didn't really go there much, but I did. You know, I always heard my mom say, "Well, when we lived in the third ward or whatever, you know, and that's where the Italians were. You would find Italian groceries, and sometimes my dad or my brother would go there and pick up stuff that you couldn't, you know, get at Kroger's or wherever. But there were two churches that we kind of hopped back and forth between. One was the Central Church, which that has some history in and of itself, but used to be a home, a very large home, right along Lake Michigan. And the other one was called the Concordia Church. And the first thing I remember from that was going there, and as a small child, you know, you kind of hear the sermon being preached, but that's about it. But the songs, the hymns, was something I kind of enjoyed singing. And there was something about the service that I couldn't put my finger on during the hymns. I was singing, and I heard other people, but it just didn't sound right. And I noticed that there were two hymnals, and I opened up one and I couldn't read it. Well, it was German. And it was in the old German script. And then I started to remember, you know, when they go up and they announce the hymns, the guy would go up and he'd say, "We're going to sing hymn number 327," and then when jetzt it's singing, and he'd go and tell and it might be a different number.
Sure.
And you have the people singing in German and in English. It's the same song, which made it easy for the organist. But, you know, but they were singing it in different languages at the same time. So it was just kind of something that stuck in my head. And just
that was in both churches?
No, that was just in the Concordia Church.
Concordia.
It was just a combination. And they had the, you know, like the pastoral prayer. They would have it in English, and then he would repeat it in German. So that was kind of fascinating to me at the time.
But your Italian origins.
Right. My father was Italian. He actually first generation American.
Your father.
Yes.
So he was not born here. He was born.
He was born here.
The first born
he was born here. I'm the first. Well, I guess I'm the second generation. But yeah, his brother was born in Sicily.
Oh, Sicily.
But his parents came over, and he was born, you know, in the United States. But my mother is German background, so I've got that combination. So
Interesting. Yeah. So speaking of religion, how back in time were they Adventists?
well,
What do you know?
and I'm going by the memory of the stories that I've heard. My father was raised Adventist,
Really?
which is which was really kind of odd because when you were Italian, you were Catholic.
Absolutely.
You know, and so he was actually raised Adventist because, as I recall, there was somebody, don't remember who had an evangelistic series in Milwaukee in Italian,
Oh.
in the Italian district. And my grandmother converted, and then she started, as far as possible, to raise her kids as Adventists.
Yeah.
My dad kind of drifted away from it and then came back to it. And my mom was, she grew up Lutheran, and then she converted, I think, a little bit before I was born.
Oh.
So I've always been in an Adventist home, even though the time before that was a little less solid, I
Do you
guess.
happen to know the surroundings of your mother's conversion from Lutheranism to...
I don't recall all of it.
Sure.
It's just the things that I do remember is she was kind of discussing it with her mother, who was, dyed in the wool Lutheran. And she says, if you're going to do this, do it all the way.
Oh, very interesting. Very impressive indeed.
So, and, my mom just had a birthday recently.
Oh,
She turned, I got to stop and think about this now, 94.
oh, beautiful.
And she's still Seventh-day Adventist. She can't get out to church as much as she would like, but
But other than that, she's
other than
in
that,
good
yeah.
health and,
Yep,
yeah. Wonderful.
pretty much.
Your father?
My father died in 1999. He was 75.
20 years old. Oh, quite young, yeah.
A lot of his family, it seems to be fairly consistent, right around that mid to late 70s.
Yeah, yeah.
They would kind of just give up.
Do you have siblings?
I have one brother who is 9 years older than me, and a sister who is 6 years older than me, who wishes that I was a girl, but that's another story. She wanted a little sister, but whatever. And they both live in Milwaukee, and because my sister's retired and in fair health for someone, almost 70 years old. She helps my mom with shopping and stuff like that. My brother, he's caring for his wife who had a stroke not all that long ago. And he's, not as mobile as he once was.
Sure.
But yeah, he does what he can, and it's all kind of taking care of stuff up there.
Very interesting memories from family and church as well.
Yeah.
And this blend of culture, English, American, Italian, German.
Yeah.
Very interesting blend.
I never picked up. I at one time wanted to learn Italian from my father, but I'm not sure. It would be a little difficult to do because knowing how to speak a language and knowing how to teach it may not be exactly the same thing. So, but I did end up studying German in junior high and again in college, but never got to the Italian. Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Marianne, what was the atmosphere of your home besides growing up on a farm and then moving to a place with such a historical heritage as Battle Creek? What else do you remember from your family?
Well, my family is a very musical family.
Musical.
My mother
This
taught.
is something I was expecting.
Yeah, my mother was a piano teacher and taught in the home. And she also would play the organ for church. My father sang in choir, which is one thing I loved about the Battle Creek Tabernacle was they had a really nice choir and a good choir director, and that was really influenced me to become a choir director. And as soon as I could, I joined that choir.
So lots of music.
A lot of music. My brothers, I have two older brothers. They took brass instruments, and I took flute, and we were always involved in something.
Yeah, that's precious. And So you also took you had
Yeah,
formal musical training.
my mother tried to teach my older brothers piano, but they weren't that interested in it.
Yes.
So I was the youngest, and I was the one that was always pestering her, and so she would give me piano lessons just every now and then, whenever. But as soon as I could get lessons from like the flute lessons, and then later organ lessons and voice lessons, then that was more on a regular basis.
I see.
And then, of course, when I went to college, I studied music.
So you were obviously very, very involved in the church, in music, and probably in other aspects of the church activities. Was there a time you remember when you made a decisive step to surrender your life, or it was a gradual process, something moving along?
I think it was a gradual process, but I will but I will say that there's times when I made more of a decision, I would
Yes,
say,
yes.
and those times tended to be when the school would have a week of spiritual emphasis.
Very interesting.
And
Tell us more about that.
I would remember one time, I think it was in 8th grade, and there were some students from Andrews University that visited our school, and it was a very powerful week of prayer and spiritual emphasis that they had, and a lot of us kids were really, I mean, we were crying. We were so impressed
Very
with,
interesting.
the Spirit really moved on our hearts.
And as I understand, the speakers were very young, the
Yeah.
students.
Yeah,
but
they were.
They had a way of speaking to you,
Yes.
children, and to touch your heart and to enlighten your mind. That's very impressive. Very impressive. So you got baptized about that time?
I was actually baptized before that,
Before?
and by my grandfather, who was a
Oh.
minister.
He was a
So
minister.
yeah, it's always been a gradual, thing. So yeah.
May I ask you, sometimes, children make a decision about that time, but then as they grow up, they see so many other competing ideologies and worldviews, and they begin questioning and having doubts. How it was for you?
Well, I would say it was very easy to remain an Adventist,
Yes.
being in the Adventist system
Yes.
and being surrounded
Yes.
with all that. What's more difficult is, as an adult, you go out and you're not surrounded by that anymore.
Yes. Yes.
And there's a lot of pressure from, at work to do things that I wouldn't normally do. And, I'm glad I have the background, and I'm glad I know that there's other Adventists out there and to support me in that. But yeah, sure. I mean, life hits you hard when you're an adult, and you have to make a decision. Am I really going to trust God? You lose a job. People in the church even betray you, and those are the really hard times. But you say, am I going to stick with God? Am I going to believe in Jesus, regardless of the actions of others, even in the church?
So, after all, for every person, there comes a time when your faith is tested,
Oh yeah,
and you have to make up your mind and to say, this is
Absolutely.
my way or another one.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think also being in music, and music is so controversial and special and personal. And I have, over the years, made choices that are a conservative choice in music. And have been challenged on that a number of times, and still studying, and there's always this influence that tries to creep in that wants to take the music in a more secular direction. And am I going to go along with that? Am I going to, what is the right thing for right now? And how can I best use music to influence people for good, and not influence people to go and turn away from God.
Yes. We'll return to that. How it was for you, being a teenager and a young adult.
Well, I actually didn't attend the Adventist school, wasn't in the Adventist school system until I was a freshman in high school. Up until that time, I had gone strictly to public school.
Sure.
And it was different. It was different to go in there, and I had the things that everybody knew, you know, like, okay, here, now you'll need to write down all the books in the Bible in order from memory. And what? There's Genesis and Psalms and Matthew, I think. I don't know exactly where, you know, and it was something different. It was something dramatic. In the school, I went from a junior high where we had 3 grades, I don't know, maybe 2,500, 3,000 students, to a school where there was 10 grades, maybe 100. You know, and the class sizes were smaller, and you know, it was just different. It was I don't know, I just kind of felt a little bit isolated because I was the new kid. You know, this is human nature. The new kid always seems to get the brunt of it. But yeah, I think when you said something about looking at being within the faith and then kind of getting pulled in different directions, I was baptized at a camp meeting when I was about 12.
I see.
I don't know if I was ready in retrospect, because I really didn't study much of anything. It was just kind of you answered an altar call, and so we'll baptize you type thing. I'm glad I did it. I think that I've grown, you know, I grew in the faith from that point. But the learning that was going on, you know, the history and the studies of Scripture and things like that. When I went from Milwaukee Junior Academy and then the Wisconsin Academy, you know, learned some there, and it was not a path like this. It was, you know, there was dips and bumps and all the rest of that stuff. But when I got to Andrews, I kind of was feeling the tug that you do with a crisis. I don't even really want to call it a crisis of faith. You're just starting to think, well, what if I get to the end of all this and none of this is true? You know, and so I kind of purposed in my own mind to kind of weigh it. What's going on? Why should I believe that this is true? And part of it was the classes that I was taking. Another one was just a personal thought process, you know, and I think it came in most firmly in connection with the songs, the music that we were doing.
Really? Okay,
You know,
music.
because when I went to Andrews, I joined the choir up there, and my family was not well off, and so it was kind of like go to school for 1 year and stay at home and do nothing for another year, and then go back when you get a grant and all that type of stuff.
Sure.
Well, one of my second year up there, I guess it was, I got a call from a friend who was also from Milwaukee. And she said, you know, called me up and she said, Bill, yeah, hey, this is Marlene. I said, okay, hey, how you doing? She said, you sing, don't you? And I'm going, why do you want to know? And you know, first thing that came into my mind was leading song service or having special music or something like this. And she said, no, the group that I'm in lost a tenor, and I was wondering if you would be willing to try out for that position. Tell me about it, you know, and it's a choir, you know, it's the Andrews University Singers, and blah blah blah. Sure, why not? That'll be fun, maybe. And so I went and I talked to the director, Dr. Lusk, and he said, well, yeah, come on in and we'll, and he gave me some, sing this tone, go, do this and some other stuff. And okay, now sing this thing. Okay, try to read this music and everything. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you come into the rehearsal and just sit through it and see if it's something you'd be interested in. I thought, yeah, this is pretty cool. It's kind of fun. They're doing some good music, got some, nice sound out of this. And it was just, I was used to like a high school choir. We had, one or two people, but I'm in the background. I don't want to cause any problems here. My biggest fear is messing up in the middle of a concert, and standing out like the sore thumb where I come in a beat and a half early or something. But anyway, so we were doing that, and he said, if you'd want to do it, just, let me know. And I said, yeah, I think I'd like to continue with this. And that's actually where I met Marianne.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you were also part of the choir?
Yeah.
It was a large choir, not very large.
Right.
About 35 people, maybe.
Yeah, 35, 40 people. Which was, coming from Little Battle Creek, it was a big choir.
Yeah.
It wasn't, they had another choir that was a lot bigger.
The chorale.
But this choir that we were in was really one where more of the music majors were in, and we were the traveling tour group.
I see.
And it was an auditioned group, which was something brand new for me. I had never had to audition. I thought choir, you just went in because you said you'd be willing to sing. But this one,
No, it was
yeah, they were a little bit more,
at a
little
higher
more strict.
standard.
Yeah.
So for how many years have you been in that choir?
Oh, no. This was only at Andrews.
Yes, I think.
Okay, so I was there, 2 years, two
We
and a
were in
half?
it a couple years, yeah.
And then I left school because we were getting married. And so I was, finding a job and so forth, and I wasn't at school, couldn't be a part of the choir.
And I didn't want to travel with a group if I was getting married, so.
So
So we
that
went into
was-
the bigger choir then at
So
that
that
point.
was in the 80s or
70s, late
70s.
70s.
Yeah,
70s?
we got married in 79.
79. Oh,
40 years.
40 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We also have our
That was
40th
our,
anniversary next year.
Oh, what is it?
Our 40th anniversary will be next year.
Oh, okay. Well,
Congratulations.
to you.
Thank you. Yeah, you're beginning to say something.
I was just saying I had mentioned earlier to you that we had spent some time in Vienna and Prague, and that was actually our 40th anniversary trip.
Oh,
Yeah.
So we went there, saw some concerts.
beautiful.
Music continues to be a theme. Oh,
Yes.
Oh, man, we
the
heard
music in Vienna is just
Queen of the Night solo at that in Prague was just amazing.
yeah.
So
Anyway,
So I don't think you mentioned what were you actually studying at Andrews.
oh boy, it depends on which year. The first year I went there, I was a chemistry major because I wanted to be a doctor because doctors make lots of money. Looking back at it, I don't think I would have been happy being a doctor, even if I had gotten
What
through
would
that.
you bother you? Having much money, big money, or what?
Well, I mean, I was growing up, we never had any money, so you always look to try to compensate for that.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that, yeah, I'll be a chemistry major and go and be a doctor and be a surgeon and make lots of money and then retire and have lots of cash and all the rest of that stuff. And I didn't really stop to think, in later years, I've kind of looked back at it. Maybe I'm disappointed that I didn't push it harder, but my personality is not one where I like to be, I have to make a decision and there's a lot riding on my decision. And if it's wrong, there could be severe consequences, like, I don't know, death, And so I don't think I would have been happy being under that type of pressure. So second year, I was introduced to organic chemistry, which kind of augured me into the ground, and didn't do well in that. And so I changed my major to education. And after the second year, I had some time where I was trying to find work, and I found out that people really weren't impressed that you'd had 2 years of college. They wanted to know what you could actually do. So talking with my dad, he said, well, why don't you take 1 year and study something like, electrical or air conditioning or auto mechanics or something like that. And I said, okay. And I took a year of auto mechanics.
That
And
was not at Andrews.
that was at Andrews, actually, yes. Murray Lofthouse. And went through that and got the little certificate from that. And then I said, okay, well, I got a career, might as well get married. And so we got married. I worked as a technician for several years. We moved down to Atlanta, where Marianne was teaching at AAA, and I was working in the garage, working at the dealership, and going to school. And I finished up my degree, and then I went and taught 5th grade for 1 year, and I decided, it was a whole lot easier working on cars. And so, yeah, it's a whole another story there. But no, I worked on cars I taught for like the 1 year, went back to working on cars, and through some other little gyrations, Marianne actually found a newspaper advertisement that Ford was looking for instructors. And I'm going, teaching and auto mechanics. It's kind of a nice combination. And so I applied for that, did that for about a year and a half, where I went to the dealerships. And then they said, oh, that position is going away. It's not going to exist anymore. Would you be interested in becoming a full-time instructor at one of the training centers? And I thought, yeah, sure, that sounds good. So they flew me up to Detroit. I had an interview for about 45 minutes, and I flew back from Detroit the same day, like right after lunch. And so, and then I just kind of waited around, twiddling my thumbs, waiting to find out what was going on. The guy in Atlanta said that he'd be willing to take me on as one of the instructors. So I walked in the front door in January of '95, and I've been at the same place ever since.
Wow, that's
So-
impressive in our times.
Yeah, coming in January is going to be starting my 26th year there.
Fantastic.
So
So you enjoy the job?
I do. It's a lot of fun. It takes some work sometimes and a little bit of hair pulling with some of the technicians, but other than that, yeah, it's fun. When you talking to them and they suddenly, you mean I just, and they give this thing, and you see this light of recognition go on in their eyes, and I'm going, yes, that's what I've been looking for. It's not consistent, but when it's there, it's great. When it's there, it's great.
Marianne, in the meantime, you are continuing your studies. I don't think you mentioned what were you studying.
Oh, I was a music education major.
Music education.
Yeah, and then I was hired at Atlanta Adventist Academy a year after I graduated, and that's what brought us down here. And I taught there for 3 years.
3 years.
And then, like Bill, which I tried to tell him it was going to happen, if you realize that working in the business world is less stressful than teaching, and often you're making more money.
Yes.
And so after 3 years, I went back in the business world. I worked a number of years as an administrative assistant. I got hired at Intercontinental Hotels Group, and they said, oh, we're starting this new software. We're implementing this new software. We need some people to test that. And I said, I'll do that. So then I went into quality assurance and product management, and a lot of stuff with software. I'm one of the people that can talk to both the software developers and the business and kind of figure out what each one's looking for and put it together. My current position is a product owner in the Agile software delivery system and working on the reservation system.
I see. So, if I hear you well, you wrapped up the music thing, and that was all.
Well, no, I do not volunteer. So music, what's great about music is you can volunteer. Everybody lets you volunteer. So I volunteer at our church as the choir director. Been doing that for probably 28 years. And I've been in community choirs because I like to be able to just sing in my range all the time. As a choir director, you have to sing other people's parts and prompt them. You don't really get an opportunity to sing, sustain in your range. And just this last year, Bill joined me in this group called New South Festival Singers, which we're really enjoying.
We'll come to that. Let's
Yeah.
return to your ministry in the church. So for almost 30 years, about from the beginning of the Atlanta North Church in Dunwoody, you have been the choir director of the,
Yes.
yeah?
Atlanta North came from another church
Yes.
that had a long tradition of choral music. And when they first moved to their current location, that director was still living, but he passed away. And we had a Romanian choir director that was very, very good. And when I first visited the church, I'm like, wow, that's great. I'm going to go sing in that choir. And I started coming to the choir, and the man that was directing says, how about if you take over directing this? I'm like, okay, I'll do this a little bit, just a little bit every now and then.
Famous last words.
Yeah, and then, somehow I became the director.
20 years, just a little bit.
Just a little bit, just for this week,
Yeah. So, is anyone besides your husband in the choir was in that original group?
Yeah.
really?
Holly and,
Yeah.
and Jim.
Yeah?
Yeah. And Daniel Santiago. Yeah.
But most of them
Oh, it's a,
turn over.
It's a
Oh,
flux.
you
It's just
know.
inflow and outflow. It just
Atlanta North, because of where it is, there's people come and go for
Yes.
for the way they were, business and all that. So over the years, and our church, just had their 30th anniversary.
Yes.
And I was on the committee that helped to organize it, and I was looking at all the records of all the people that used to come to the church, and I'm like, wow, we have had a lot of people come into Atlanta North, and then, they had to move on to another place of business, or, they retired and didn't want to live in the Atlanta traffic or something like that, so.
As far as the size of that choir is concerned, what do you think was the highest number?
It's been 40,
40.
yeah. And we have 40 choir robes, just in case we fill it all up again. But yeah, I remember there was like one year there were like, okay, am I going to need to stop wearing a robe so that the next person that joins, because we were right at 40.
Yeah.
The next person that joins, I'm going to have to give him my robe,
Yeah. And how do you find the repertoire? How do you look look for pieces of music?
Well,
what are your criteria?
my criteria
Yeah.
is, is it music that is within the capability of our choir,
Yes,
or
sure.
just slightly beyond the
Yes,
capability
yes,
of our
slightly
choir?
beyond to-
Is it a style that's consistent with the other music that we're doing? Of course, the words, are the words meaningful?
Yes.
Do I have enough people in the choir that can sing it? So like an 8-part number,
Oh.
I might do that for Christmas or Thanksgiving, because we generally have more people come in for that. So I go through a process of looking at there's some great sites for buying music, and now what's great nowadays is a lot of them will have samples of the music. You can listen to it and get an idea.
Yeah.
Back when I was first starting, there was nothing like that. But you would get a music catalog, and then you could send to the music company to send you samples of all the music, and then you'd go through that, and then you could return what you didn't want. And so through the years, I've got a lot of music that I might get, So at home, and Bill knows, I got stacks and stacks of choir music, 4-part, 8-part, children's music, men's, all that. I got all that at home. So when I'm like, okay, what am I going to do for Thanksgiving, and then I'll go through those, and something will spark that's going to be our theme for our program this time. Like this year, our theme for our program is started with a piece of Frank's Psalm 150. And I thought, hey, I have other pieces already in our library that are Psalms. Wouldn't it be great? Let's do a Psalm-based Thanksgiving program. So that's what's going to happen this year.
So what are some of the joys and the sadness or the, of a church choir director?
Well, the joys is kind of the same as the sadness. Is like it's so joyful that there's other people in the church, at our church, that are interested enough in this music to come and sing, and they put trust in me as a director, which is a very humbling thing, and. The sadness is, like before, these people move on, they have to move away. The struggle with, in Atlanta, the traffic's hard. It's not a professional group. It's not, so people don't always come to rehearsal as often as maybe I would like them to. It's not, in school, you were required to be there. Everybody showed up all the time. So it was easy to have a rehearsal, and you knew who was going to be there, and you could plan out everything. But it's not quite that way. But it's very rewarding, and got a good group of people.
In time, over let's say 30 years, do you see an increase or a decrease or no change in the interest of the church members in choral music, in good music? What's your perception?
I would say, from having visited other churches, that in other churches it has dwindled. I used to be a member of another church in the area, and the interest was kind of dwindling. And I moved to Atlanta North for many reasons, and it just so happened I happened to moving into a church where there was still a very big interest in traditional music, and having so many people in our church that are interested in traditional music feeds into the choir and people having a musical background. So I would say over the years I haven't found that our church is less, but I have, in visiting other churches, I see that it's less, and a lot of them have gone to praise groups or more casual, less formal worship, whereas Atlanta North has been kind of the haven for people who feel a hunger and a desire for that traditional experience.
Do you think the fact that the church has a very nice pipe organ has also contributed to keeping this heritage of classical kind?
Yes. That's part of it also, and we have also some really good pianists that come. So we've been very blessed over the years to. Where some churches we've gone to have had to just rely on just putting a CD in, and then that's how they sing their hymns. They don't have anybody that can do the live music. So we've been blessed in that respect, and all volunteer.
Sure.
And I think part of it is that the people that are musical will tend to gravitate to a place where good music is performed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have people coming from, 30, 50 miles. At one point, we had somebody coming from 70 miles away to our church because they had a musical degree. They knew they could come to Atlanta North and fully participate and get a good religious experience that touched them personally.
What are your feelings after working for months and months to an important program? And now it's over. It's over. Like, a few weeks ago, after the 30th anniversary program. Now it's over. How do you feel the next minute?
Well, when I was younger, I used to get completely exhausted. But I guess I've learned to pace myself over the years now and realize, as you grow older, you realize I used to get so wound up over the program, and so worried and so nervous.
Yes.
And I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I would just get, whenever I was in charge of a big program like that. But over the years, I've learned that, life is going to go on, whether bad things happen or people don't show up or whatever. Somehow, God will provide some way through, and we'll make it. So, I mean, I was very, after this last one, I was very pleased. I felt it went a lot better
Yes.
than we anticipated, and a good turnout, which always helps. It's what I find is disappointing is when you've prepared a lot and then nobody shows up. Those are the struggle times.
Yeah.
And with this one that we just did, the 30th anniversary, I think, for me at least, we did the program. I thought it went well, and got a lot of positive response from the congregation. I think part of that being over was also kind of tempered by all the people that you saw that you hadn't seen in so many years.
That was what was so wonderful about it. Again, it's like, oh, these people, I'd made friends with them, and I couldn't see them face to face. And
Like going to a reunion.
Our
like a
theme
high
was
school
face to
reunion.
face,
Yep.
and we're like, that's what we want. We crave so much being able to talk to people face to face and getting caught up with them and everything like that.
Bill, we are going to return to the music because obviously that's the guiding theme of our conversation. In the meantime, you have also developed another gift, the gift of storytelling.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I don't even know how I got into that
You
one.
don't know.
I'm trying to remember. I think somebody just kind of wrote me and asked me to do a children's story, and it went well, evidently. And so I was, doing that on kind of a consistent basis. And then I don't remember exactly when somebody came to me and they said, well, nominating committee wants to know if you'd be willing to be in charge of the children's story,
Coordinate, yeah.
coordinating it and all the rest of that stuff. And I don't know what's involved. But sure, okay, why not?
Yeah.
And so I did that on and off kind of for like 12 years. I did it and I'd say, well, I want to take a break now. And so they'd get somebody else. And then about halfway through that one, they said, well, I quit. And so I went ahead and I'd finish up their term. And then they'd say, well, while you're here, you want to do it again? Yeah, sure, why not? And back
So
and
in your
forth.
opinion, what are the qualities of a good children's story?
Well, in kind of concert talking with the worship committee, they've kind of got some guidelines of what they're looking for, as far as time frame and so on. Relating a story so that the kids are interested, and it's not easy because you've got such a broad range.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can do it like I've done with props that keeps their eyes on things like that. Other ones you kind of have to just gear it to a certain level and just hope that it kind of spreads out, to the rest of them. I've kind of noticed, and I told the kids this on more than one occasion. I said something about, you guys, I really appreciate you paying attention, because quite honestly, if you look behind me, the congregation's listening too. So,
Yeah. Stories carry a meaning and a lesson for life.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So how should I choose the lessons? Because sometimes we go this direction, then this direction. Sometimes we emphasize grace and love. At other times we are very keen about obedience and conformity. How should we present a balanced and consistent theology? Because there is a theology.
It
in
is
children's stories.
theology in and it could be just to awaken a thought process in the minds, or just thinking about what they're doing. These are children, okay? They would like to hear an interesting story, but you don't necessarily want to do a Jonathan Edwards sermon of hellfire and brimstone. I'm sorry, that's not what they're thinking. They're curious about things. They have questions about this this being that they can't see, that everybody talks about and we talk to, but they can't see him. They've opened their eyes during prayer and they don't see anybody out there. You know, to try to give them a lesson that they can relate to, and I'm trying to think of a way to say this. Something that they can apply, something that they can be not afraid of.
Not afraid. I like that. I like that very much. Marianne, we are going to do something. I hope you'll not be, offended by that. We speak a lot about of music in this program, but we are not going to sing at all. But let's invite Bill to tell a story.
Okay.
It's not the most appropriate, environment.
I don't have any props with me, I don't have any flash paper or stuff like that. But
yes.
in a lot of times when I tell stories, and the limitations, I try to make it as I wrote up a list of things for the storytellers, and I sent it out to everyone that agreed to do it during the quarter or whatever. And I say some things, like the time frame and so on. I try to avoid, if I can, the magical stuff, the talking animals. If I can, I'll include it if it makes a point. But for example, we'll use an example. You're going to be the children here, okay? And I'll start my stories like I start a lot of them. Once upon a time, there was a boy. His name was Jim. Not a boy so much, but kind of a young man, because he could drive. And he had one day where he had a very good day and a very bad day. He had a good day because he had to go and run some errands. And he got to drive his father's brand new car. Just got it. Brand new. And he went out there with the key in his hand. Man, he was feeling good. Until he hit another driver. He got scared. What am I going to do? What's Dad going to say? What's going to happen? And so, the other driver was very nice about it. There was no injuries or anything like that. But he said, look, we've got to take care of this. We've got to exchange driver's license information. And we've got to exchange insurance information. So he went there and he opened up the glove compartment. And he pulled out, I'm starting to get a little emotional here. He pulled out the insurance card. And he saw a note. And the note said, son, I love you. Not the car. And this is the message that God sends to us. I love you. I'm not worried about the behavior.
Oh my.
That would be obviously a very shortened and abbreviated, and hopefully a little more self-control, but that would be a type of story that
No
would be.
apologies needed. I'd love to be a child staying there to listen to your stories.
I've had a few people that sat up there with their kids, but yeah. We've had some very good, very interesting storytellers over the years. The one that I remember that fascinated me no end was when I got Jeff Jordan to do the children's story. And I don't know if you remember Jeff Jordan. He was the deaf pastor. He stood up in front of the kids. His wife sat with them, and he signed the story, and she translated.
Yeah.
They were fascinated.
Absolutely.
They were fascinated. So was I. But
Thank you. Let's return for the last minutes. available to the music. You said you volunteer. I mean, before of that, I know you have also helped with music many other churches,
Yes.
not from our denomination, because on Sabbath you're of course very
Sure.
involved in that, but on Sunday, why do you do that? And of course, they are happy to have a musician helping them, but what's in it for you?
Well, what's in it for me, when my kids were young, I actually did it professionally
Yes.
because many churches pay their musicians. And, you know, I was able to go and help and play the organ or sing in Sunday churches and still come to our own church.
Sure.
But now we volunteer just for the pure love of it, and sometimes our friends, they have a need, we'll go in and help them at Christmas or some other urgent need they have, just to shore up their choir. And it's great to feel like you can help somebody in that respect with whatever unique talent that God has given you. But yeah, like Bill and I now, we have decided to volunteer in this community group, the New South Festival Singers, which for me, as a professional musician, is very challenging, and the music is a lot more difficult than what we normally do in a church service. And this particular season, I've asked that director if he would let me direct and give me feedback, because he's got a lot more education and training and is up on the latest techniques. So for me, it's a great opportunity for me to expand. And you know, God admonishes us. He gives, you know, the stories about the talents. If he give you, you know, 5 talents, 10 talents, 2 talents, 1 talent, you're supposed to go invest it.
Yes.
And you know, it's I think music, it's one of those things that's obvious to say that's a talent.
Yeah.
I think other people may struggle with, you know, they're good at math and they may not realize that's a talent, but that's a talent too. So anyway, and I'm also blessed, like I say, to have Bill in this group too.
So it's also a time you spend together.
Time we can spend together.
We're not sitting together, but
Not
we
sitting.
know that we're there.
And it's serious business. There's not a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
socializing in these groups. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like 2.5 hours
2.5
rehearsals
hours every week.
and then on concert weeks there's longer rehearsals, and it's just hours and
Additionals
hours,
for them.
additional long
Yeah,
rehearsals.
that's quite impressive, and it would be good for every member of the church choir have such an experience, to see how serious others are
That's
about
true.
music, and it's not for God; it's just for their own pleasure, and for sharing music with other music lovers, but much more
And
for God's praise. Yeah.
the music that we do is kind of a combination of both the secular and the sacred,
yeah.
because like this time, our upcoming concert is women composers and arrangers. Well, one of them was Alice Parker, who worked with Robert Shaw, and we're doing what, three
3 pieces by him,
by
by that group. Yeah.
early American hymns that, you know, she helped arrange, and gorgeous pieces. Just
And
wonderful.
Robert Shaw is a huge influence on American choral music. When I was growing up in the 60s, we had a few recordings of him. We weren't very well off. We had a couple recordings, but we had some of them we had with the Robert Shaw chorale. I mean, just a huge influence on music. And when we first moved to Atlanta, he was the director of the symphony chorus and symphony and the symphony. And for 1 year, I was a member of that group.
That I can imagine that was an
Oh,
outstanding
it was
experience.
the highlight of any musical experience I've had was
Yeah.
singing with him. He just got so much meaning out of the text and
You
everything.
had both performances as a choir, or always with the orchestra?
Always with the orchestra.
always.
Yeah,
Pieces like
we did the Mozart Requiem. You know, we did Beethoven's Ninth. We did. He was in a Requiem year that year, so we
Prolonged
did Fauré and
Prolonged Gloria.
and and that kind of thing. So yeah.
Wonderful. So we are going to close. If among our viewers are people who know they have a musical gift and that they would have a choir where they could go and work with other music lovers, what would be your word of encouragement or admonition to them?
Oh, do it.
Why should they go?
Oh, there's many reasons to join and be a choir. There's lots of studies that show that singing together has an effect on your health, your heartbeat, your respiration. So just from a health standpoint, but nobody thinks about when they're going to choir. They go, I can go sing some good music. I can go sing some music I like, and that's what they like to do. But the camaraderie, and of course, if as a Christian, being in a group and where you're singing praise to God, I mean, it just affects your whole mind and spirit, and it's a strengthening experience. And there's most groups out there you don't have to audition to join, so don't be afraid. Our church choir, you don't have to audition. I welcome anybody. We've had some people in there we've had many people in our choir that don't know how to read, and we repeat it enough that they learn, and I send out recordings. So there's ways to learn that don't feel intimidated if you've never even tried music before.
And besides that, singing in a choir is one of the few activities we know for sure will continue in heaven.
That's true. That's true. Probably not working on cars. Sorry, Bill.
Probably not working on cars, no. I still got the math thing in the background. That's
Okay.
It was such a pleasure and joy to have you.
Well, thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Continue to give you joys in music and in your family and in the church. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.